Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are returning to Gary Grigsby's Bombing the Reich. Technically, Eagle Day to Bombing the Reich, but we're playing the Bombing the Reich scenario. It is September 15th, 1943, so we're in turn 30, so we're basically a month into this Let's Play as the Allies, and we've got I think a big day ahead of us. The weather looks like it should be good over Northern Europe in our target areas. Forecasts for many of these areas are under 20% cloud cover. Italy is going to be a dicier affair. I'm doing some risky things like having a bunch of missions come in at under 10,000 feet, which feels borderline suicidal, but we'll see how bad the flak is. We're about to do, I guess let's take a look at, I should have done that. Let's do Italy first. So if we take a look at the paths here, not a ton of recon flights today, but we are sending a lot of sort of medium-sized tactical raids in Italy. We're going to be hitting Rome with some night bombers. We're going to be hitting the depot at Lorenzo, the depot at Vezzano, at Sulmano, Vasto, Termoli, and Ostrenzi. I'm butchering those pronunciations, I'm sure. If we take a look at the orders for those raids here, these are all going to be a little bit further down here. 144 night bombers hitting Rome, 54 bombers hitting Termoli, 51 hitting Vasto, 53 hitting Lorenzo, 57 at Avanzo, and 64 at Sulmano, or Sumolno. Z is 50, and 56 fighters are sweeping a place in, I guess, an airfield near in Brittany. We also have a couple of large raids occurring in Europe, in Northern Europe, that is. We've got 66 bombers hitting the depot at Cologne in the daytime with escorts almost all the way. Those are, I believe, what are these guys flying? They're Mitchell 2s, so this is dicey. Because we're flying Mitchells in. I mean, these guys are not heavy bombers. They're flying in at medium altitude. This raid may get obliterated. But they do have fighters, in the case of the Mustangs, all the way, and in the case of the Spitfires, most of the way. And the intent here is maybe to draw up enemy fighters and get them, worn down. If we take a look at the bomber raids here, we also have 241 bombers coming in an hour after those tacticals at a steel mill here on the sort of just south of Liège, which we tried to bomb previously but did not manage to get much damage against. And then we also have 200 bombers heading to a rubber facility, the Michelin rubber facility here, just to the northwest of the steel mill. And these are are these medium bombers too? These are Typhoons. So these are fighter bombers, but I never see them do any fightering, but they do have a decent escort and pretty much, again, all the way. And then we have the 241 bombers at the steel mill are American B-17s. And that's pretty much it. We have 115 B-26s hitting near the coast, near Rotterdam, hitting an armament plant here. I mainly went, more or less went max effort because the weather looked like it was going to be so good. Now, some of these raids are coming in a bit low. Again, the 15,000 for those guys over Cologne, that's probably a suicide pact for those Mitchells. I mean, they're flying over a flak alley. But we also have 714 bombers going to Cologne here, trying to hit the city at night. The RAF will be hitting Cologne at night. Cologne has suffered some bombing, but we're coming in with a approach south to north in the hope that the bomber train sort of trails these bombs off south and hits sort of undamaged parts of the city. In the previous raids, it came in north to south, and so you can see the damage pattern skews from the center to the north. Hopefully this way we'll damage it south or north to south and fill it in more like something like Essen, which is very badly damaged and almost entirely burned out to maximize the terror score. So that's what we're looking at here. We've got some diversionary bomber raids out into Germany, to Hanover, to Hamburg. Those guys are all mostly just jammers and fighters. But pretty big turn this turn. Few raids that I'm a little bit worried about, but we will see how that plays out. With that being said, no reason to wait. Let's go ahead and jump into the raid. So we'll go ahead and end the turn and the planning phase and see what we can manage here. Hope you guys all had a great weekend. Hey, Seabass. Yeah, we're gonna see this. Titus over on my Discord posted a setting on the DX Wind to help, I think, make the text look a little bit more legible. So hopefully it looks good for you guys. It looks better to me, so hopefully it looks better on the stream. And Pawn, thank you very much for the bits. Appreciate it. All right, so a lot of recon occurring here. As usual, I always fly the recon first thing in the morning to try and get good pictures of the targets the day of the strike. Didn't really attack a whole lot of airfields. Didn't have good intel on most of those fields. So I elected to mostly go for bomber raids, and maybe we would draw some enemy planes up. I'm worried about those Mitchells flying over Cologne, though. It does look like 32nd Bomber Group is over target. They're bombing the plant near Rotterdam. I don't know that they have any escorts. I did fly some planes to sweep to cover them, but I was hoping that the speed of the B-26s would be their salvation. It does look like they made it into the plant, but they are getting bounced by F-190s, so this could be ugly. We do have some fighters coming up to hopefully take the pressure off, but B-26s are not... B-26s survive because they're fast. They're fast two-engine bombers that when you get in a tail chase against them, 190s can slowly catch up, but the 26's primary benefit is its speed, and we are losing a fair number of those. I was hoping to avoid a massacre. I wouldn't call it a massacre yet, but we might lose a tenth of the force here. We'll see. They keep bouncing. The fighters are approaching, but they're not quite there yet, and the formation is starting to come apart. Fortunately, it's a raid right on the coast, so maybe that will give them some protection. And maybe the fact that we are engaging these German fighters earlier in the day will give the Mitchells some solace, because these German fighters will have to land to refuel, presumably before the 90 minutes of the next Mitchell raid coming in toward Cologne. So that's the hope anyway. Otherwise, these fighters all being up already could spell doom for that raid too. Also, my fighters came in here and apparently just flew right past the enemy escorts, which are still savaging my bombers. I had hoped that those fighters would come along and would be close enough to engage these German fighters, but the Germans are chasing them right back out over the channel and doing a lot of damage here. So unfortunately, this is a bad day to be a Marauder crew. This is probably, historically, this would be worse than any day of the war for the Marauders. They had one of the lowest loss rates, despite being sort of notoriously difficult to fly. They had one of the lowest loss rates of any Allied aircraft in terms of combat losses in World War II. Again, because of the speed advantage that they had, and instead I'm getting them savaged. Again, would they have like 115 planes up? We've already lost 15. So not a good day for our crews. Some easy kills for these Germans, and the Marauders' speed has not done them any benefit. I guess the saving grace is they got onto the target before they really got hit, and so hopefully they had accurate bombing at the very least. But we will see here. So the German fighters are coming back. We've got... Looks like one of our Spitfires is bouncing a German. What target are they over? All right, so the 47s are engaging the Germans on the way back. They lost one P-47. They've destroyed two 109s so far. I doubt they'll get a whole lot. So they flew to the target, and they just kind of flew past. And then even though these P-47s are coming in largely fresh and the 109s are presumably low on fuel and ammo, those air engagements did not go very favorably for us. We shot down two 109s and lost a couple planes as well. Germans are flying 109s and 190s. So, at least those raids that we saw. I mean, they've got a lot more aircraft types. I'm curious to see if the Mitchells can make it in or if the Mitchells get obliterated, because the escorts for the Mitchells are not very good either. Although at least on the way in, I do have some groups flying with the Mitchells and on the way out. So it isn't like what I flew with the B-26s, because I didn't have any squadrons available for it. I flew them to the target alone, and then I had some fighter sweeps map to their raid so that they would fly over the same course. And so at least with the Mitchells, they're going to be flying to Cologne with escorts assigned to their direct mission and not just the same course. So we'll see if that makes any difference. Is it true most of the German losses didn't come in combat but trying to land and take off the 109? I don't think that's true. Well, I mean, they might have lost a lot trying to take off and land, but they lost a lot of aircraft to combat uses. Especially, you know, I think one of the B-26s were at 15,000 Hauser. One of the least sort of discussed, and I know Hauser's a champion of this, one of the least discussed campaigns is really sort of the back half of the North Africa campaign into Sicily. Sort of between those two windows, the cream of the Luftwaffe was wiped out in the Mediterranean. They lost, like, more aircraft in a few months there than they did, I think, in the entire Eastern Front in, like, 1943 or something like that. Like, it was a huge percentage of their Air Force was actually destroyed over the Mediterranean, which is gets almost no play in any sort of popular discourse. It's always like B-17s and P-51s over Northern Europe, and that's and you know, and Battle of Britain maybe, but like no one talks about the Mediterranean Air War, which was huge in terms of the attrition put up against the Luftwaffe. All right, so our P-38s are joining the bombing raid here. It looks like actually they're strafing the troops. So this raid here is targeting a rail depot to the west of this particular unit, to the west of the 65th Infantry Troop, but it looks like the P-38s decided, nah, man, we're going to dive down on these troops and we're going to rip apart these boys. Meanwhile, we've got some Mustangs, some early era Mustangs with the bad engines, flying near Brussels here. Looks like they damaged a Memi 410. And then we are attacking, a 410A destroyed. 12 Mustangs flying through here. Is this the raid? No, this isn't the Mitchell raid, is it? Either way, we're doing some damage here, or we're engaging in a more even trade, I would say, with these 109s. The Reich yearns for the bombs. Slifix, thank you for the resub. Appreciate it. All right. Good job, Mustangs. Bouncing those 410s. Looks like we got a lot of German aircraft up in the air. This, I believe, is the Mitchell raid. They took off at, they linked up at 410. So these fighters must be screening these German aircraft off the Mitchells. But this is a big furball developing here. I'm surprised the Mustangs are doing okay-ish. I think we're flying at like 18,000 feet with the Mustangs, so it's not quite like the 24,000 or 20,000 plus altitude engagements when you're escorting big bombers. But the Mustangs are doing, I would say they're acquitting themselves well. A D-520, which is, I believe, a seized French aircraft, just tried to bounce some guys, but one of the 5 got shot down, and another just got shot down. 23B F-109s are firing rockets at the Mitchells, and 2 Mitchells are damaged by those rockets, and 3 destroyed, so that's great. They're still a ways away from the target, and we just suffered 3 destroyed and 2 damaged enemy rockets. Mustang 1, I don't know exact. That's all the game tells me. We've got the Mustang 1, which is the machine gun version, and then you've got the Mustang 1A, which I believe has cannons, I believe. I don't know what that maps to, Hauser. But they're the Commonwealth Mustangs, not the U.S. Mustangs. Extremely good under 10K. Well, they're fighting at about 18, so less good up there. All right, so they made it to the target. 18, oh God. 2 damaged. Only 1 destroyed by that bounce? Okay. These guys, one of the squadrons is turning back. They got almost all the way to the target and they didn't drop their bombs? That is not good. I think we had 3 or 4 squadrons assigned to that raid. This is going to be a bad day for the medium bombers, at least over Northern Europe. The medium bombers over Italy are fine. The Italians surrendered recently, so the Air Force of the Axis got massively thinned out there. There are still several good German squadrons down there, but especially to the south, near the front, the presence of enemy aircraft has fallen off considerably. And our Spitfires are also diving down on this infantry formation here, or I guess this mechanized formation here. So our escorts for these 50 bomber missions against the rail depots are helping themselves to the nearby enemy ground units. The Mustang destroys a balloon. Good job, I guess. All right, 15 109s bouncing Mitchell 2 squadron, 1 damage. That's it? Okay. Why are you strafing that airfield if there's no aircraft? Okay, never mind. 3 110s are just damaged on the ground. 1 more damage on the ground. 2 more damage on the ground. So they're wrecking a 110 squadron, at least in terms of readiness. Only one of those was destroyed, but several damaged. Another destroyed, okay. I didn't run a sweep down there, so these fighters just took it upon themselves to strafe an airfield near the target. I would rather them shoot down the guys trying to blast those Mitchells out of the sky, but what are you going to do about it? I can't remember what the Mitchell's target was, though. I have to go back and look again. I think it was a rubber plant, but that might have been the Typhoons. Mitchell destroyed by flak. It's a P-51A. Okay. Okay. Well, I suppose the only saving grace of these medium bombers getting absolutely savaged, our B-26s and Mitchell 2s, are that the B-17s hopefully will have an easier time of it, I guess. All right, they made it to the target. 18 bombers are they're bombing the Cologne rail yard? Did I really order them to? Oh, that's right. We hit the rail yard first, and then the area bombing will happen later. It doesn't seem like that's a good trade to hit a rail depot for the exchange of, like, potentially 20 bombers. Trying to see if there's any fires that these guys set. It's not a incendiary raid, but another Mustang destroyed a balloon over Flushing. Another Mitchell destroyed by flak. Okay. Hey! Gunners on one of those Mitchells shot down an enemy fighter. Good job, boys. Why are you guys strafing the rail yard? Go for the fighters hitting the bombers. 110 destroyed. I don't see any sign of fire. I guess a small rate of medium bombers may not do, and again, without incendiaries, they may not do much urban damage. I'm curious how much of the rail yard they damage, though, because we've got those 700. We've got those 700 RAF bombers coming to Cologne tonight, also. 109 G6s. I imagine we're going to have a lot of strung out Mitchells that either get picked off on the way home or get shot down or crash on landing. But we've already lost 40 aircraft. This is not a good day for our boys. We have shot down almost 20 enemy aircraft. And in these raids, like, I think as the Allies, what you win on is less the airframes, because the Germans are producing, I mean, what'd they make, like 13,000 109s? It's like the Germans are going to make enough aircraft, probably. If you're going to win as the Allies through attrition, it's going to be less on the airframes being destroyed, and it's going to be more on the pilots being killed, I would assume. And I would assume we have considerable advantages in this game in replacing pilots when compared to the Germans. But I don't know that for a fact. I don't know why we're destroying all these balloons over Flushing. I don't even think I had a raid planned out that way. I guess the advantage with strafing... Oh, we got 2 110s. Nice. I guess the advantage of strafing airfields and destroying aircraft on the ground, which I've done quite a bit of in this game, is that you lessen the number of ready aircraft in the short term to hit your raids on follow-up days or during the same day. So yes, you might not destroy enough of them to change the overall complexion of the number of aircraft they have access to, but if their squadrons go from being 90% ready to 50% ready, that makes life that much easier on your bombers when they scramble the squadrons that have been beat up a bit on the ground. Okay, Mitchell 2 destroyed. Hey, Suffolk, how you doing? But we are getting quite a few of their I mean, 110s are twin engine, bomber killers. Those are valuable to shoot down. 2 Mitchells lost there. I feel bad for these Mitchell crews, though. I don't think I'd use the Mitchells in 2 or 3 days, and they jump right into their version of Schweinfurt, basically. Probably worse. But, Blood for the blood gods, I guess. Good for the 17s, though. Are the 17s even coming in yet? They keep firing rockets at B-25s. I assume that's what the Mitchell 2 is. But we are damaging quite a few of them, shooting down a decent number. I wonder if the game gives the enemy a limited number of rockets. Like, it simulates a lot of detail around production for the access side. I don't know if there's like a limited quantity of rockets or if it's just based on like a supply vector. I haven't ever actually played as the Germans. That's not true. I played as them for like an hour or two just kind of looking around at stuff, but couldn't make heads or tails of it because this is one of those games like War in the Pacific where you manage at least all of their air, like all their fighter production and economy. And so it kind of overwhelms me. Seatown, thank you very much for the resub. Appreciate it. We're going to need those subs to make up for all these Mitchells that are getting shot down and B-26s before it. Woof. I'm honestly surprised at how many Me-110s we're shooting down. We're getting a lot of those. I know it's not a nimble aircraft, but you'd think if they're coming in and they're firing their rockets, they'd be firing outside the range. Ooh, friendly fire. 109 destroyed by flak. 109 crashes. Me-410 destroyed on landing, although the pilot's okay. I don't know how we would know the pilot's okay, but Spitfire HF9 intercept, and they lose one. Weird that the bouncing aircraft on both those exchanges lost. Okay, we're going to lose. Our B-17 raid hasn't even hit yet. Also, I'm a little bit nervous about the RAF raid tonight because the enemy... we're going to be flying in with moonlight. The moon set is like 7 in the morning. So they're going to have moonlight. Oh no, a Mustang hit a balloon cable. Probably destroyed a balloon, but I'm guessing I'm guessing it crashed. 109 crashes. Another 109 crashes. Rockets are notoriously inaccurate, but again, when you've got 20 190s or 109s coming in and firing a volley of them off into a formation of fixed bombers, you definitely can do damage. Meanwhile, we had P-40s. I took the liberty over the last couple of turns to move a bunch of air units forward toward the front line in Italy, so we've got a decent amount of coverage by like P-40s within range of most all of the targets south of Rome. I think we've got like 200 short-legged fighters that can cover everything south of Rome pretty much now, which makes escorting these guys easier, which would be more enjoyable to enjoy, lol, if it wasn't for the fact that it seems like the German Air Force in Italy has basically vanished, or the Axis Air Force has basically vanished since the surrender of Italy. I'm hoping these German formations are exhausted between the two raids that they did intercept. The 17s, I'm not quite sure if they're up yet or not over Northern Europe, but it does look like most of our bombing raids here in Italy, again, without the enemy fighters threatening them, I had all of the raids in Italy coming in at 9,000 feet, and I was worried we were going to get savaged by enemy flak, but it seems like most of these rail yards do not have sufficient anti-aircraft guns in Italy. And my aircraft seem to just be, well, we got a 37 millimeter there and a quad 20, but it seems like most of our raids are going in without any real resistance over Italy this turn. Okay. I'm honestly, like, the Mitchell losses are a little bit stressing. It sucks that we've lost so many aircraft. The flip side of that is I'm kind of surprised we've shot down 30 enemy aircraft. Almost 40. But I don't know why there's no sound for the game. I'm not hearing anything. That's weird. Usually, I don't think I turned everything off, but maybe I need to get like some soothing, rights-free background music. All right, I think our... Ooh, 3 190As there with our P-47s. I think our B-17s are coming in now toward Liege here with these P-47s engaging these F-190s. 4 kills so far against the 190s without any loss. I kind of wonder if maybe some of these enemy squadrons are on their second or third intercept of the day, which maybe they're getting fatigued, because I don't usually see them. We just got 2 more. I don't usually see 6-0 KD ratios. B-24 is hitting the steelworks. I would assume they're hitting within the target. Okay. So the 200 B-17s came in. I wanted to fly a bigger mission of 17s, but the morale on our 17s is very low right now. So where was that P-40 that just crashed? All right, got another 109. We just keep bouncing these enemy aircraft. Now, I did come in 3,000 feet over the 17s. Most of my aircraft were on high escort, but what did we get? Like 10 enemy fighters there without loss? 2 more 109s here? All right, 12 109s coming in and bouncing our P-47s. They damaged 1. All right, so the 109s are bouncing us now on the way out. They're not doing very well. They're damaging a couple of aircraft, but... Good job, boys. 2 more 109s. These guys have to be tired. This has to be their second or third intercept or something, and they're just not fighting very well, because I never see KD ratios like this as we're seeing on the American B-17 raid. We are savaging these guys. This is going to be a disastrous day for the medium bomber squadron's readiness numbers and morale. But in terms of the overall result, if you told me 68 Allied aircraft lost and 53 Germans in almost all air-to-air combat, I think I should be good taking that, that trade. I think. I don't know, someone more knowledgeable in the campaign could tell me if that's a disaster or not. But to me, the Germans losing, 40 pilots and me losing 60 pilots, I'll take that exchange at this point in the war anyway. Long range drop tanks and stuff. All right, we're strafing some aircraft here over Brittany. This is a little less valuable, but we are destroying some Bf-110s. I feel like that is a squadron, if you know where they are, that is worth damaging those on the ground, because they did not produce the same volume of twin engine fighters as they did daytime fighters. Probably still sufficient, but it's got 2 engines. It's more valuable. Cliche, thank you for the resub, by the way. Okay. I'm thinking about doing some Kingdom Come Deliverance this week. The sequel comes out on the 4th of February. I never actually beat the first one. I got pretty far into it, but I'm thinking about doing a casual stream. Probably wouldn't post anything on YouTube. Maybe I'd do a dual stream. Maybe I'd stream to both YouTube and Twitch. I think I can do that now with Twitch's policy, and just sort of have a shoot the shit, play an RPG and just chill. Again, I don't think I'd cut it up and post it as a VOD on YouTube, but because I already know that wouldn't do. It wouldn't do well for the channel, and that's not really my jazz as far as the kind of content I usually try to cover. But in terms of just hanging out with folks in the chat, that could be a fun game to play. Meanwhile, those Mustangs hitting the airfields in Brittany. A couple of them were lost to flak there. Another one lost to flak. But I think there's only one squadron of Bf-110s there, and they're wrecking it. Say let the bodies hit the floor, but they're probably our bodies are falling from the sky. The Germans are on the ground, so it is historical. Suffix. I was going to be like, I should make a top 5 historical game, most anticipated historical games coming out, and that would be on the list. I didn't think they had that many aircraft there. We can't destroy aircraft multiple times, though, right? All right, that should pretty. Oh, I forgot about our Typhoons. So we've got our fighter bombers coming in now. Maybe the Germans are going to try and intercept these guys too. I don't think we have as many escorts, but this is another raid, and I deliberately spread these raids out over the course of the day. So we had bombing raids coming in. We had 4 major raids between the B-26s, Mitchell 2s, B-17s, and Typhoon 1Bs, all kind of in the same general vicinity between the Ruhr and Charleroi, or south of Brussels. And they all came out spaced out over 6 hours in an effort to tax and exhaust the German escorts to make them less and less effective as the campaign went on. Perhaps it would have been better if I had done the B-17s first, given their ability to receive damage. But I didn't want the B-17s to get hurt too badly. So MU-410s, again, I'm guessing those guys are on their second intercept. That's the second time we've seen them today in any event. Lieutenant Benjamin Chase is killed on landing of his B-24. Sad. Meanwhile, with all those ground kills, KD ratio is almost up to 1-to-1. Not quite, but almost. Probably will slip away from us a bit as we get into the night raid. I never have much success shooting down enemy night fighters, but this is a bloody day for sure. I didn't see a lot of reports of Mitchell 2s crashing on landing, so I guess all the guys who weren't going to make it got shot down and never made it back. So, anyway, photo recon missions are going to come in now, and then the night raid will start a bit later. We do have the one night raid over over Rome as well, but getting some good recon of Cologne before we hit it with 700 bombers tonight. I deliberately didn't do a 1,000 bomber raid because I thought 700 coming in would be enough, would probably sort of max out our efficiency. And then I figured that that would leave me 400 or 500 fresh bombers to bomb tomorrow, in addition to anyone who isn't too badly fatigued. I'm going after Cologne because I believe it's still inside the G and oboe radar range, so they can radar bomb and be very effective. I'd be tempted to go deeper, but like in my raids outside of Berlin, which is so huge that you've got a pretty good chance of hitting the city regardless, although certainly not starting a firestorm. I've been hesitant to do a lot of raids sort of into the interior of Germany, just because your bombing efficiency at this point in the war, as the British goes down so much, and these are RCM radar jamming flights up here to the north, leading into the flight. So you can see these guys pulled up a lot of German night fighters over in northern Germany as they flew toward Hamburg, Bremen. I think one flew toward Hanover. Looks like they all made it to the target, pulled up a lot of German fighters, and have not actually hit the target. Meanwhile, our raid is coming in. It does... Ooh, a 190 just crashed. It does look like there's a lot of German fighters still swarming to the bomber formation here in the south. So you can see these guys now that they saw, hey, this was a miss. They're bouncing some of these early day raids here. These are 24 Lancaster Pathfinders. This raid feels very spread out. There's Halifaxes there. It seems very spread out. We've got some mosquitoes attacking troops in the night. In the middle of the night. Some Beaufighters attacking the Ghent rail yard, okay. But yeah, I drew up a bunch of German fighters to the north, but they still pivoted and scrambled, so... Scrambled south. We're not to Cologne yet. Or is the lead formation here to Cologne? I'm always amazed how spread out some of these raids are. 100% falling in open area. Is this outside the 300-mile range? Like, what are they doing? That's way off target. I guess they could have been jammed. Does the game play historically, or does it make sense to pick strategies that were not actually tried in World War II? I think it could make sense. Oh, man. If we end up having no real damage, that's the third formation to drop over open territory. That's going to suck. In terms of whether this game makes sense to use non-historical formations, I think it depends. Let's get rid of the German. I can't do that. They still show up, don't they? Oh, there we go. It was the following units was turned off, probably for performance, but here's the full bomber stream coming in here. I don't think anyone's hit the target yet. But in terms of whether it makes sense to follow historical strategies or not, I mean, I think it makes sense to follow. They're hitting north of Cologne. This is not going to be a a firestorm. These bombers are dropping all over. They might have been outside the oboe. That's the one thing I'm a little frustrated. Sometimes it feels like it shows you a good range of where the radar goes to, but not always. And I don't have a protractor to measure out the right distance from England to get the targets to hit the right place. But I would say mostly following historical strategies is sound. I mean, it's a game, so like you have a perfect knowledge of as much as you know anyway of history. So like you could definitely take non-historical strategies and avoid mistakes that the Allies make, right? Like if you're the Americans, does it make sense for your B-17s to go after Schweinfurt in 1943? Probably not. You could still do it, but does it make sense? Probably not. There's no way to turn the German aircraft off. I wanted to see if we were getting any fires started up here in Cologne, but there's so many German fighters that I can't see anything. Fortunately, it does look like at the very least we're not, so far anyway, our bomber stream has not lost a ton of aircraft. I say that as we lose our first Lancaster there. You mean in hindsight, should the Allies have been hitting rail transport much more? So the way the game scores is it does try to encourage you to... It looks like we've got some fires here on the northern objective, which wasn't even my target. The way the game scores, so it scores three ways. There's terror score, which basically is like bombing out urban centers. So that's sort of how the British are effectively evaluated. There is industry damage, which is sort of like the American strategic bomber offensive against factories. And then there's air superiority, which is your ability to reduce the Luftwaffe's ability to actually fight. And so you could go for a transport strategy where you're hitting rail yards left and right instead of factories, but you will probably get fired before too long if you do that, because your industry damage will fall off as factories get repaired and you do nothing. And then you're not going to do, I guess you might do some terror damage because rail yards are usually in industrial centers. And so like you might get some terror score there. I think the Americans can still do urban damage when they attack rail yards because it's the same target. So like maybe you get some terror points for that, but your industry damage falls off. Now, rail damage can affect industry. If you destroy all the rail yards around a factory, it can prevent resources from moving around, and so steel can maybe not make it to an arms plant, which can give you points for industry damage because their production might fall off. But I think more likely before you get to that point, because it's going to take a long time to destroy all those factories, or those rail yards, you'll probably get fired beforehand because you won't be doing the political thing. So, oil industry is a very valuable target. Hitting oil makes sense. The Allies hit oil even early in the war, maybe not as concentrated as they should have, but they did hit oil. So that does make some sense. But yeah, so I mean, like, I don't know. I think it depends. I don't think there's a silver bullet of like, hey, if you only focus on oil, you will win the war. Because I don't think, especially early in the war, you've got the right tools to effectively choke off German oil production this early in the war, especially without having those long-range fighter escorts at this stage. But I think it depends. It could be a worthwhile attempt. I've definitely done some things where it's like, all right, I know a little bit about what happened historically, so let's try and not make all the same mistakes. But it depends. Yay, the Halifaxes are dropping in the Cologne area. We got a nice little fire stream here in the northern end of Cologne. I was trying to hit the southern end, but those bombers shot long and hit the Cologne something or other, which I think is actually a rail depot, but it's an urban target as well. Yeah, you do also have to follow historical targeting guidelines. So like right now, I can't bomb factories in Italy. I have to bomb depot, like I have to bomb rail yards or ground troops or air targets. Like I have to follow the avalanche targeting guidelines because that's what Eisenhower is making me target to support the invasion of Italy. And so for a period of time, that's all I'm allowed to hit. Whereas in And then if I don't bomb U-boat targets, there's U-boat factories and there's U-boat pens. And if you never bomb U-boat factories, eventually, due to political pressure out of England, you're going to be forced for a turn or two to bomb U-boat pens. And U-boat pens give you no score advantage. They don't help your score at all. It is purely a diversion away from these three things you're going to score. I guess you could get some air superiority score if you shoot down a bunch of enemy fighters on a U-boat raid. But otherwise, like, they do nothing for you. U-boat factories still count for industry damage. Bombing U-boat factories does make some sense from a gameplay perspective. It's not a high-value target. It doesn't give you as much. Like, there's different priorities of factories. Steel mills are worth less, I think, than oil refineries. Aircraft and ball bearings are worth more than power. But if you bomb all their power plants, you could shut down all their factories due to lack of power. So, like, it's all kind of interconnected. It's a very detailed and thorough game. Yeah, so you don't win the war per se. I don't think you would win the war if you destroyed every single factory. I mean, you do. So you can win, Stalins. Just to be clear, like, if you score 90 points, you win, which I assume would represent like the utter collapse of the German war economy. I think that is very rare for you to get to the instant win score. In terms of ground combat, the ground invasions like D-Day and Avalanche, those will happen on historical timelines. You can speed up breakouts, so the war could end a little bit earlier on the ground because of that. But in theory, I think if your score is above 90 right now, you could win. But I think you'd basically have to level every single factory, and the Germans would be producing nothing, and all their cities would be nothing. I don't think the instant score is terribly realistic, but I guess it's theoretically possible. My bombers really all went long. I don't think I targeted the Cologne, whatever it's called, gray area. I'd be curious to see. I do get urban damage for that, though. So you can see these red squares here represent damaged sections of the city. Each square represents 1 square mile of damage. So you can see this northern suburb of Cologne is getting obliterated, which was not my target. I was trying to hit sort of central south of Cologne, and my planes seem to have all flown long a bit and seem to be damaging the northeast corner of Cologne, a little bit of damage in Cologne Nips, but Cologne Garonne is getting pummeled. Again, those red areas represent fires. Which I didn't do any recon on Garonne, so I don't know that we'll have a good sense of how bad the damage is. There is fog of war in this game as well, so keep that in mind. We're up to 85 aircraft lost. The Germans have lost 3 or 4 aircraft here at night so far, so. Do I see any difference in what you bomb? Your bomb arms, plants, garrisons? You can degrade the Luftwaffe's capability, yes. So this game does track aircraft airframe. So the game there's aircraft engines are produced in engine factories. Aircraft sort of frames are produced in aircraft factories, and then avionics factories exist as well. And if you destroy enough of those, that will influence production on the German side. So you can directly influence how many aircraft of different airframes and whatnot are getting produced based on the damage that you inflict. Also, every single aircraft has a pilot assigned to it. Every pilot has a skill or experience level. So you shoot down the right pilots, and you can dramatically degrade the quality of the Luftwaffe or of your own planes. I think pilot losses are easier to sustain as the Allies, but it's definitely a thing. But yeah. And then, the Allies have a certain number of aircraft replacements, but German aircraft replacements are entirely based on what they prioritize and what they produce. I don't know how good the Germans are at managing the economy in this game relative to to an AI, to a human player. I'm sure a game like this is very susceptible to being broken by an AI, by a human player who can exploit the game's mechanics in the same way that War in the Pacific, like a Japanese player can min-max their economy so that they do way better than Japan did historically in terms of like they can compete with Allied air production well into late 43, which is just not a thing historically. Like I'm sure a German player could optimize R&D, which is a thing, so maybe they get the 262 faster. Maybe they get more of them. I certainly think that's something that could happen, but I don't, we're playing against an AI, so I would assume the way this is scripted is I would guess the Germans are going to kind of follow a pretty historical line on a lot of those dates in production. The Allies do not control their own aircraft production, but the Germans do. So the Germans can choose what they produce. The Allies just sort of have fixed replacement rates because this game does not have Western Europe, right? So or Western, like doesn't have the U.S. So like it has the U.S., but it doesn't have the U.S. industry. It doesn't model U.S. war production. So B-17s are produced along historical-ish B-17 production lines. I believe in the Battle of Britain scenario, the British can produce their own aircraft and how much they want to produce of it, because the British control their factories in that scenario and the Germans don't control their factories in that scenario. But effectively, the defending side can control their own industry. This is a long turn. This is really dragging out. I know this is probably not super exciting, although maybe I'm giving you some insight about the game as we wait for all of these aircraft to move through. We can speed this up too, so you don't have to wait on all of these alerts. So we can just go ahead and say like, all right, guys, let's go ahead and move. No more updates as these guys drop bombs. I'm curious when we can, I think our aircraft are off the target. So let's stop right now. Let's go see. We still got a bunch of Beaufighters up here flying over Germany, trying to intercept German planes. We've now lost 111 aircraft. So during that time where I sped things up, things went bad. We lost a lot more aircraft. Although the Germans are up to 95 aircraft lost, so maybe we actually shot down a fair number of night fighters. Looks like Garonne got pretty badly savaged. These black squares represent a completely destroyed square mile, whereas the yellowish squares, the darker the yellow, the more damage. But these represent damage but not destroyed versus completely blacked out is completely destroyed. We also did set some fires here in northeastern Cologne. I don't think we got the terror score we probably would have liked for the night. But let's go ahead and continue. Within reason, Seatown. I mean, the game definitely models different advantages of different aircraft. But again, it's a highly detailed game that is also highly like you're at a grand strategy level or a grand tactical level. I don't even know what you're like. Aircraft have, Mustangs are not good. The early Mustangs are not good at high altitude. The earlier P-38s are not as good at high altitude. They lose a lot of maneuverability at those altitudes. So like the altitudes your raids come in on definitely, play to the particular aircraft traits. So yeah, I guess. I don't know how much turn, maneuverability is I believe a stat. But yeah, you can see, I don't know how often players are really diving into the nuances of all of that. That being said, this is a bloody turn for us. All right, 77 miles for the parachute troops to the Gustav line. Okay, so the enemy is moving into the Gustav line. So until last turn, we had been told, like, these units are moving, but no one said they were moving to the Gustav line. They just said they were moving north or advancing or retreating. So we are now into the phase in Italy where things are solidifying. You can see these units lining up across that spot in Italy here where the Gustav line is going to take shape. A lot of these German troops have been fairly disrupted, which in theory, if you disrupt the enemy ground units enough, you could speed up the victory, the breakthrough of the Gustav line. But we are now moving into the phase where the Gustav line will be established, a new front line will be established, and then things will slow down north of Naples. We have started opening up new airfields here. Foggia, for example, we brought in 4 squadrons of fighters here last turn. I also brought in some squadrons to Capaccio, south of Naples. I'm assuming we'll get some squadrons closer to the front as things solidify and more airfields are opened up. If we take a look at the after-action review, let's take a look. Let's filter by bombers. I'm assuming the heaviest losses came in the night raid. We lost 43 bombers out of 714. That is our worst day for the RAF in quite some time. That was the night raid going to Cologne. It says damage of 41, but I don't remember what we started at. So out of 714, we lost 43 bombers. That is a loss rate of over 5%, which is pretty damn bad. If you're losing more than 5% for the RAF, that's considerable. We shot down one enemy interceptor. That's it? Okay. Did we get anybody on these night interdictions? This guy, this one night fighter shot down one. So the scores are higher than the interceptor losses here, which I guess the rest of these guys are maybe ground kills. So this looks like it's 38, or yeah, 44, 46, 47, 8, 9, 10. So 10. Wait. Sorry. I can't do freaking math. 38, 44, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so 50 aircraft shot down in the sky, I guess. If we go to aircraft losses here, well, no, let's not do this. Let's go to campaign summary, I guess. Today, the Germans, or the Allies lost 64 pilots KA, 50 MIA. So we lost 114 crew, 17 wounded that returned to base. 114 crew. The Germans, meanwhile, our estimate for them is they lost 22 pilots KIA. That's a good number of KIA pilots. They've lost about 300 total so far in the campaign. We've lost over 1,000 though. Plus almost 500, over almost 1,000 POWs plus. We've lost nearly 2,000 pilots in a month. They've lost 300 with 40 wounded, temporarily removed from action. That's less good than I would have hoped. The Allied Script ready aircraft, 3,038 aircraft ready, I think. 1,025 for the Germans. That might be their lowest readiness score yet. I think the parentheses is ready, and then the points are based off that. Maybe, I'm not sure. But this seems real low. It's a lot of aircraft damage. Industrial output. So points for strategic bombing, 1,600. That didn't really change much. Terror bombing's up to 105,000. I think that went up a little bit this turn. It does. This says 3 for industry damage. So that would be an increase of 1 for our score. List top pilots. So we have no one who's an ace yet, at least since the last month has started. We've got a bunch of guys sitting on 4 kills. All of them are P-47 pilots. P. Johnson of the 96 Bomb Group has 3 kills, but he's missing in action. I believe sometimes MIA crews can make it back to friendly lines. I don't know. I'm guessing yellow means wounded, and then the number is the fate. Here, the number represents the severity of the wound, and then obviously KIA being red, they're dead. All right, so if we go back to the after action, the bombing raid of Cologne was not a success. I wouldn't call it a disaster. 6% is a bad raid, but it's not like Schweinfurt level bad in terms of percentages or what the British would suffer. Like, I don't think the British ever had a raid like Schweinfurt, but they definitely had raids where it's like, we can't keep doing this. 43 is certainly the worst we've had in a while. Our B-17s over Orguri Mari High, or however you pronounce that, pummeled the steel mill here. 94% damage. So it's good and shut down for now. It also didn't lose a bomber or a fighter. We shot down 17 enemy fighter interceptors without loss with these B-17 south of Liege. That is a dream scenario for the 8th Air Force. The 200 bombers that hit the rubber plant here obliterated this rubber plant south of Brussels. And so these were the Typhoons. These came in last We lost 2 of those, I believe, to flak. 1 fighter intercepted and shot down 2 enemy interceptors. So good there. The 144 bombers who hit Rome, I didn't even look at that for the nighttime raid. I don't even know how they did because Rome had already been somewhat damaged, but they did fly in and hit Rome. So that happened. Get those Romans. And then you've got the B-26s, which hit the armament plant north of Rotterdam. Didn't really seem like they did a lot of damage, sadly. They lost 16. They lost 10% of their B-26s without inflicting a loss on the enemy. That was kind of frustrating. The Cologne rail yard attack with the Mitchells. Oh my God, I only sent 66 Mitchells. I thought I sent more than that. I thought I sent like 100. We lost more than half the raid that was sent out to Cologne. 38 Mitchell 2s out of 66 flying. That's a disaster. We did manage to shoot down 21 enemy interceptors, though. So I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, that's that. The Italian front basically was a nearly a lossless turn. Lost a couple of interceptor or fighter aircraft, probably on their strafing runs against those German ground units, those tertiary targets, and then we lost 2 bombers, presumably to flak. I didn't see a single enemy fighter fly over Italy. But yeah. Okay. So I guess we end the turn. All right. So we are still on avalanche orders for the 12th Air Force and the Mediterranean Air Command. I would really like for these guys to be able to get off their stupid bombing of German troops. As the German troops move into the Gustav line, as they move into fortified positions, they become less vulnerable to air attack. So, like right now, these guys, they might be out on the, I was gonna say out on the street. They might be out on the roads trying to get into position. That makes them more vulnerable during the retreat phase, and where you can do a lot of damage. But like once they settle into their positions and they're not moving, they're less vulnerable here. This Panzer Grenadier unit, woof, red. And then we've got this German unit up here. But unfortunately, I've still got to just like sit in here with my dudes. Is that a new airfield? Got some Baltimores there. And wait for them to be able to target different things. Northern Europe looks like it's going to be a rough day over France. 76% cloud cover is the forecast. So we are not, and I can tell that down here, the 76% down here in this little mini map, that's cloud cover. So probably not wise to bomb anything over here. Over Germany, things look a little bit better, 14%. So the Rhine is, or the Ruhr, this area is kind of like right along the edge of whether there'd be good cloud cover or not. But in theory, we could try and hit some like, not that this ever worked out badly for the B-17s, but we could try and go for some of these factories, maybe go for a steel mill near Wilhelmshaven. There's a bunch of oil tanks. The oil in here is used by enemy aircraft as they fight. So in theory, you could be like, hey, we need to try and destroy those storage facilities. Doesn't do any industry points, but it cuts down on the enemy's ability to fly sorties. Alternatively, we could go for the U-boat factories near Bremen. We've already damaged some of these in previous raids. This is one of the largest factories on the map, the Deutsche Schiff U-Boat-Werke, 14 capacity factory. 15 capacity factory at Bremen-Seebach. That one is badly damaged from a prior raid. But usually the higher capacity whatever gives you more industrial points. So the thing is, outside of the U-boats, you rarely see any like really gigantic factories. The ball bearings works and Schweinfurt can be pretty big. So if we go to if we go down here to, this is Regensburg, oil facility 2-8 for that aircraft factory. 6 for that oil refinery here. Okay. Meanwhile, Schweinfurt's got 2 capacity armament plant, 6 capacity armament plant. All right, this is Nuremberg. Where's Schweinfurt again? Is it further south? Where am I missing it here? Oh, it's up here. 45 capacity ball bearing factory here, the Kugelfischerwerk, which we did bomb and is now still moderately damaged. And then 26 for the Varengeite Kugelfabriken. So we did bomb it on the historical date, and we lost roughly historical losses. It was a bad day. If we wanted to, it's 400 miles. Should we do it, guys? Should we do it? Should we be like, Schweinfurt 2? For a long raid like this, I need more waypoints. I need more waypoints to make this work, to avoid as many of the flak areas as we can. So you'd still probably have to fly over like Koblenz, which would be a heavy barrage of flak, presumably. In theory, if we were to do this. What's the morale look on these 17s? All right, so we've got like several squadrons here. The 100th, for example. These guys are all in the 40s, which is not very good. A couple of these guys haven't flown in a few days. And are still in the 40s. But a decent chunk of the 50s haven't flown in a while. So in theory, I mean, these guys just had very successful raids. I think this green arc here represents radar range. So in theory, Cologne should have been inside radar bombing range. I think that's what it represents. So if we were to do that, how many bombers with above 50 morale could I get? Because this is not a raid for a low morale unit. So we could get 247 bombers. That feels low. How far can my fighters get? So they can get south of Liège with no delay. If I add a 30-minute delay, they can cover from Charleroi to just shy of Koblenz. Spitfires go a little bit deeper, almost to Bonn. I'm guessing, yeah. If I wanted to just have them cover for like 30 seconds, I could get them to meet up just short of Koblenz, and then they'd have to turn back as soon as they get out of Koblenz. So you're still looking at the bulk of this raid being unescorted. I don't know, part of me wonders, like, we're not doing this raid right now, but part of me wonders, with the German readiness level so low right now, after that very intensive day, after yesterday being a very heavy day of raids, does it make sense to do a deep strike today, thinking that the German fighters are going to be worn out from a very busy morning and afternoon and evening yesterday? Like, they're still going to send them up, but maybe they'll be less effective? Of course, my own crew's probably also less effective. But I mean, that's the challenge here, is when you're playing on score and you're saying how many points do you get for damaging enemy industry. It's the only place I can think of that there's two factories of 20 plus and one of them's 40 something. I don't know if there's any of that around Berlin. I think a lot of these are smaller. You got a 10 capacity armor Rheinmetall Tegan, that's huge. Like anything above 5 I feel like is a pretty big target. Could try for Berlin. Problem is we didn't fly out that way. So whatever German planes are out near Berlin are presumably pretty fresh, and so that would be a dangerous raid. Berlin's like the only place where you've got a lot of like like 6 or 7 capacity 10 plus factories though. What's around Hamburg? Hamburg was hit by Gomorrah before the game started, but they have any factories worth hitting here? They've got some oil facilities, Shell, Grigsby, capacity 10 oil refinery, 2 capacity 10 oil refineries, and a capacity 15. I haven't done any recon to prepare for these raids. Another capacity 10. So Hamburg is, sorry, that's not Bremen, that's Hamburg. Hamburg is kind of a large oil refinery area. Hanover has a lot of targets too. Not quite as big. Obviously not sending my my poor Mitchells. If we were to do a raid with the Mitchells, what are they looking like now? The Typhoons are a little bit tired from flying yesterday. B-26s, how are you guys looking after your losses? You lost 10% yesterday. You had 115 aircraft in the air. If you try and fly the B-26s, they can muster 88 with very bad morale. One squadron, the 323rd is happy-go-lucky, 58 morale. The 322nd, 387th, and 386th, though, need some time off. Need some R&R. Okay. What about the Mitchells? I'm guessing they're worse, if I can even find the damn things. Mitchell 2s. 3 squadrons of Mitchell 2s. All 2 of their morale are pretty good, 56 and 54. The 180th is not happy at 42. They flew 66 aircraft amongst them yesterday. Today they could muster 36. Wow. They're all ready to go at it for king and country again tomorrow. Okay. What about our night bombers? How's the RAF looking there if we want to fly them to like Dortmund or something? I didn't fly everybody. So we flew, what, 700 and some odd aircraft? If I was only to fly the guys who flew 714. So if I was only to fly the guys who flew yesterday, how many aircraft are ready in these squadrons? Because a lot of these guys had 20-plus aircraft going into yesterday. The RAF took most of the last week off from major nighttime raids to try and get their readiness up, and I threw it all away with yesterday's raid not going well. So if we flew the guys who flew yesterday, we could muster 475 aircraft. So it's 240 aircraft less. But we had a number of squadrons which didn't fly, so we actually have, a lot of aircraft here that are fresh if we wanted to do a major raid again today. We don't even have, we could, let's say we dropped the 475 aircraft. We still have a lot of bomber squadrons here in the RAF that can fly again. So in theory, we could mount a 1,000 bomber raid if we really wanted to. Or if we just stripped the 470 aircraft, we could still muster almost 600 aircraft in a raid. Be like, what, 570, 560, what, 568 or so. So we can still muster a pretty good strike somewhere if we wanted to. Not sure what to do there. That was, again, the raid was kind of underwhelming. But with weather being not so great, I'm really tempted to do another deep penetration strike. The main problem is the B-17s aren't really in a position where I think they're strong enough to do it. And although I don't know how many aircraft the Germans have in Italy. It seems like since Italy left the war, though, a shuttle bombing raid might not be the worst idea because there's so many fewer aircraft. When we did our previous raid, we did a shuttle bombing raid where we flew them into North Africa per history. But if we were to do that this time around, 60% of the fighters that intercepted them on the final leg through over Italy are gone now because Italy surrendered. So that might actually be a worthwhile trip. Unfortunately, I can't shuttle from Italy to England. I can't fly the 12th Air Force at targets because they're still stuck on Avalanche. I'll have to think about it. We're not going to do it today. This will be a shorter stream, guys. I do want to thank you guys for coming out. A lot of good questions in the chat about the game. And Cliche, Seatown, Suffix, thank you for the resubs. Pawn Nugget, thank you for the bits. Prince Eugen, thank you for the follow. And I think that's going to do it for tonight. I hope you guys all had a great weekend. And like I said, maybe doing some streams of Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 in the run-up to the second game launching on the 4th of February. If we do that, they will be probably restreamed to YouTube as well. But I don't think we would do like a posting it as a VOD type deal. It would just sort of be its own thing. Just sort of a stream and chill, if you will. But we'll see. We'll see about that tomorrow. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again for coming out. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.